Chapter 651. It's no big deal to go and ask for forgiveness. Lin Che took a deep breath and took a glance at Stephen, who was looking rather helpless. I shall go and ask for their forgiveness. Upon hearing the interpreted words, Stephen was astonished. You are planning to go and look for Mr. Henry? Gasped Stephen. Yes, I was the one who caused the problem, so I shall deal with the consequences. No, you are not to be blamed. You went to meet Henry for my sake. In fact, he was also curious about the superstar we had invited and wanted to meet you. Thus, you don't have to go. How can I blame you? You didn't expect this to happen to me as well. And it was also because Mr. Henry's lover mistook me to be his new lover and hit me. I couldn't bear it and retaliated. Since I am now working for him, I should compromise. Lin Che always thought that she was someone who knew when to yield and when to stand firm. Looking at the current situation, she had no choice but to yield. Knowing that he could no longer say anything to convince her, Stephen gave her the address that he had. Accompanied by an interpreter, Lin Che came to the given address. She gazed at the neighborhood, which was well known to be where the rich lived. It was indeed spectacular. However, she saw a lot of the Gu family's villas, and this ordinary neighborhood was incomparable to them. However, the interpreter was blown away by what was before her eyes, and she scanned the place repeatedly. No doubt the rich know how to enjoy life. Look at the mountains and waters. What a beautiful sight. Lin Che soon found the unit that she was looking for and went over with the interpreter. The gate was shut and there hung a sign that read, "Attack dogs on premises." Lin Che gave a knock. An old man came out and asked who they were. The interpreter gave Lin Che's name hurriedly. The old man shot a quick look at Lin Che before returning to the house to inform about the visitors. Soon, he appeared at the door again and told Lin Che, "He will not meet you. Please leave." "Hey, why? Please help me convey a message to Mr. Henry that I was sorry for what I have done to that lady. Regardless of whatever reason, I should not have hit her. I am here to apologize. He already said that he would not see you. If you take another step further, we will report you to the police for trespassing. I advise you to leave now, or else I will set my dogs on you. You saw that sign, didn't you?" "Humph." Lin Che glanced at the sign, but she did not move an inch. "Please convey my thoughts to Mr. Henry again, would you? I came here especially to offer my sincere apology to Mr. Henry." The old man slammed the door tightly. "This is outrageous. What a bully. They are the ones who hit you first and you were just trying to protect yourself." The interpreter cursed under his breath. "I should have taken notice then. It may not have been as bad if I hit her on the other areas, but it was her face. To a lady, the damage to the face is too great, and that explains why she's so angry." Quote. "Sister Lin Che, since it didn't work out, let's go back. You are a famous star who has immense popularity. You attract crowds everywhere you go, but now, here you stand, bearing the scorns of others. The media will be astonished once they found out that you are here." That didn't bother Lin Chen. The place did not matter, but she has not come across such a situation before. Besides, ever since she was together with Gu Jingze, he has always been making decisions on her behalf. Gradually, she became dependent on him. It has been quite a while since she last dealt with a similar issue like this. She found a spot to sit. She tapped on the spot next to her and signaled for the interpreter to sit. "Let's rest here and wait for a while. Things will probably take a turn for the better. Even if it didn't, we can also show our sincerity for the very least." The interpreter watched Lin Che as she casually sat on a rock and thought that it did not look glamorous. He got even angrier. The famous Lin Che sitting at someone's door was just too pathetic. How could a superstar be treated that way? However, it was Henry who was in that house. He was from Hollywood and was no longer easily impressed after seeing many stars in his life, and Lin Che was just a minor actress from C Nation. Meanwhile, a big change was just about to happen. Back in the country, Dynamic Pictures sent a notice to Chin Wanwan abruptly and informed her of the Blood film audition at Hollywood. This was strange. That Blood role has been assigned to Lin Che. Why did they call for Chin Wanwan at this moment? Dynamic Pictures mentioned that there might be changes to the role and thus called for Chin Wanwan to come for an audition that very night. If everything ended up going well, she may replace Lin Che as the lead actress of Blood film. That day at the airport, Qin Wanwan was swarmed by reporters. "Is it true that you are going to replace Lin Che?" asked the reporters. "What happened to Lin Che? Why was she kicked out of the cast? Was the role completely switched?" "Sorry, I am not aware of these. My company notified me of a potential role, and as a loyal fan of Blood, I gladly went for it. Regarding Lin Che, I am not too sure about what had happened to her. She hasn't been contacting me after she set up her own working studio," she replied ruefully with a smile. She did not want to be implicated, yet she added some grievance to her words, implying that Lin Che was no longer friends with her and has broken off contact with her. Thus, she would not know what happened to her. Surely, the reporters were not going to let her go easily. They persistently questioned her about Lin Che. Hollywood upholds professionalism. They will not pick an actor hastily. Thus, I believe this decision is made after a lot of consideration. I am not too sure about the rest, declared Qin Wanwan. What she meant was they selected each actor professionally, which implied that they thought she was more suited for the role compared to Lin Che and was not due to any other reason. After saying her piece, she got her staff to block the reporters and went to board the plane. She boarded the plane and called the other party in Hollywood before the plane took off. Her English skills were lacking and she gave her all to pursue her dreams as an actress. Thus, she neglected her English. Moreover, she did not pass her cultural classes. Fortunately, the person who was coordinating between the two parties spoke fluent Chinese, so she could talk to her directly. That person linked her up with Henry's lover, Mary. She was believed to be the lover whom Henry treasured the most and also the woman he loved most. He would give her everything she wanted. And this time, it was Mary who convinced Henry to nominate Qin Wanwan for the role. Who cares that Lin Che got selected at the auditions, Qin Wanwan thought proudly to herself. She had the role now. Lin Che was no match for her. Now that she was acquainted with Mary, Lin Che should return to where she came from. Mary would not allow her to remain in the industry for much longer. Lin Che was still waiting at the door. It had been hours and she was beginning to feel dizzy. The sun was shining brightly. After all, they were at Los Angeles where the rays of the sun were strong. The interpreter could not stand it any longer. He took off his clothes to shield the sunlight for her. As a superstar, her fair complexion should be well protected and cared for. She should not get tanned. Chapter 652. Mr. President called for Yin Suya. But Lin Che did not mind. She grinned to the interpreter and said, "It's okay. You will get tired of standing. Don't worry, Sister Lin Che. Your complexion is more important," replied the interpreter. "That will do. Come down now. I don't get tanned easily because of my body constitution," reassured Lin Che. "Ah, is that so?" Lin Che took out her phone and saw a WeChat voice message from Yu Minmin. "Did you see the news?" asked Yu Minmin. "What?" "Qin Wanwan went to Los Angeles." "Why?" "Hollywood called her over for an audition for your role. It's all over the news now that she might be replacing you." Lin Che was completely unaware. She clicked on the reports and scanned through them. Then, she knew what had happened. "How are things going for you?" asked Yu Minmin. "I believe that this is just a precautionary measure before filming begins, to not delay production if something happens. She may not replace you. As to why was she chosen, I heard someone pulled strings for her. Most likely she is acquainted with Henry's lover, Mary, the woman whom the one you hit. I can't help but suspect that this happened because of her as well," she continued. That Qin Wanwan had really taken her as her imaginary rival. Every single time Lin Che got her hands on something, Qin Wanwan would want to have a share of it. "Mary. I heard people calling her Mallory." "That's probably her nickname." "Well, that's Qin Wanwan for you, always able to link up with her. What more can I say? Working in this industry always means that one has to rely on one's capabilities. Alright, if it doesn't work out, come back. We are not in short of production offers anyway. Come, aren't you supposed to have an interview?" "I will return very quickly." "I must not hinder you from attending to your state affairs," teased Lin Che. She joked around with Yu Minmin to give her peace of mind so that she could focus on her interview. "Forget it. Our matter concerns big bucks. The interview is nothing comparable to that," remarked Yu Minmin. Nonsense, what's more important? Fulfilling the duties as the president's wife or earning money? Lin Che poked fun at her. Of course, it's earning money. Being the president's wife is nothing. She should not abuse her power because it was high in reputable status and therefore, should not make mistakes. To think that the president had control over everything, that was not true. The president is no better than the CEO. For example, Gu Jingze, who was more carefree, could be more open in his means of dealing with his rivals. However, Gu Jingming could only resort to underhanded means. Go, are you saying that you are hard up? The president's wife is saying that she is poor. Who would believe this? Lin Che could not bother to entertain her any longer. Yu Minmin put down the phone and shook her head involuntarily. This Lin Che was truly. She was staying at the A nation's presidential residence, but it was incomparable to Glass Palace. Although both were presidential residences, this place was just not as grand. Yu Minmin was about to get down and the servants rushed over to help her. Please be careful, madam, they said. Thank you. I am completely well already. You do not have to be this exceptionally careful around me, said Yu Minmin, feeling a little embarrassed. Don't have to be careful around her. The servants would not dare to act hastily. They were the servants of a nation's presidential residence. They honored this distinguished guest much more than their master. She heard that the president's wife of C Nation had met with a mishap while she was here, but fortunately was saved. A nation would not dare to offend the president of C Nation. Thus, when that happened, Mr. President of A Nation came in person to apologize for their incomprehensive security measures, which were unlike that of C Nation. In fact, after meeting the president of C Nation and personal bodyguards, they felt that A Nation was indeed lacking. But how could they compare to C Nation, which was so much bigger in size? While the servants were still holding on to her, Gu Jingming appeared suddenly. Whenever this dashing president appears, the servants were always quick to notice him. They would look at him with infatuation, wishing that he could stay longer in the house. Gu Jingming walked towards Yu Minmin quickly. He gestured for the servants to step aside and went forward to hold her hands. Let's go. I will take you out for a walk. Yu Minmin was stunned for a moment. Then, she lifted her head to look at him. We will go back tomorrow. You have been in the room for days. Let's go out for some fresh air. That will be great. Yu Minmin nodded immediately. There had been typhoons lately. We should head back earlier in case of bad weather where the plane could no longer take off, said Gu Jingming. Yes, and I have recovered long ago, Yu Minmin told him. Don't worry, they wanted us to stay so that they could offer their apologies. Are you feeling better too? Asked Yu Minmin. She looked at his face, stealing a quick glance at his eyes. He seemed all right now. That day, no one could tell, but she took notice that something was wrong with him. He looked unwell. Yes, I am fine, he said while loosening his tie. Turning his head, he caught her staring at him. She was so absorbed in looking at him as if to decipher something out of his face. What are you doing? He muttered. I was just trying to see if you are well, she replied, ruffling her hair to hide her embarrassment. She got caught staring at him again. Surely, she would not tell him that it was because she could not help but stare longer at his handsome face. However, at this moment, Mr. President, Miss Suya came to see you. Yin Suya. Why did she choose to come at this moment? Gu Jingming paused for a moment before turning to take a glance at Yu Minmin. He could not help but feel a little guilty. Yu Minmin muttered and continued, what could have brought Miss Yin here at this time? Go and see her quickly. She came here especially for you. Maybe she was worried about you. Gu Jingming looked at her meaningfully. The reason why Yin Suya came to look for him was not that she was worried but Gu Jingming was not used to explaining himself. He simply said, I will let the servants accompany you out for a walk. Then, he strode away in quick steps. Yu Minmin watched him leave the room. This stirred up a commotion among the servants who were gasping in admiration at his departure. Yes, he's indeed an outstanding and charismatic man who has attracted too much attention and caused people to lose their minds, she thought. Whoever be with him would be in for an emotional roller coaster ride. It was Gu Jingming who called for Yin Suya. I heard that something happened to you. Yin Suya said anxiously upon seeing Gu Jingming. It's just a small incident, but this, replied Gu Jingming. Gu Jingming placed the item that she gave him on the table. What's wrong with this? Yin Suya asked. The scent of this makes me sleepy. I got someone to check it for me and there was something fishy in it. Gu Jingming told her the truth. Yin Suya looked at him with a bewildered expression. He simply looked at Yin Suya without saying a word. Yin Suya held onto his arm and asked, Jingming, are you suspecting me? He remained silent and listened to her. Looking at his expression, Yin Suya snorted. She let go of his arm and took a few steps back. Jingming, why would I betray you? Emmy gave you over to Yu Minmin and my heart broke. So when I knew that she was coming here to work, I asked her to pass this to you. But I am not sure if she did something to it along the way. Chapter 653. It was not clear if Mr. President is dead or alive. Gu Jingming narrowed his eyes at Yin Suya. Yin Suya looked at him and asked, do you really suspect me? Do you, quote. Gu Jingming hung his head low, but it could not hide his intense and sharp gaze. Yin Suya had hardly seen him like this. This side of him only showed when he was dealing with his political rivals. But then, he was looking at her in that manner. Yin Suya felt that he had changed. He even began to suspect her. After some time, he recovered his usual composure and looked at Yin Suya. Sorry, Suya, I had no choice but to suspect everyone around me. I didn't want to suspect you, but there's a possibility, so I called you over. You've changed, Jingming, uttered Yin Suya while looking at him. What? Asked Gu Jingming, shifting his eyes to look at her again. You weren't like this before. Yin Suya explained. Gu Jingming furrowed his brows and said, you have to understand that the circumstances are unlike before. I didn't mean that you changed after becoming president, but the Gu Jingming whom I knew Jingming, if I hadn't left in the first place I should have agreed to be together with you. Suya, Gu Jingming interrupted her. We can't return to the past anymore. Yin Suya took a deep breath and composed herself as if to get herself together again. Sorry, I couldn't help it but to forget it. We are still friends, aren't we, Jingming? Gu Jingming nodded. Of course. All is well then, she replied. Gu Jingming smiled. Gu Jingming felt his change too. He had become warier. Why would he suspect Yin Suya? But he knew very clearly that Suya had changed too. Because she was lying. That scent was her usual perfume. Evidently, she made this item. If it was Emmy, why would she use Suya's perfume to cover up the smell of the love drug? Even if it was not Suya who did it personally, she must have instructed Emmy in the process, because Emmy would not have known the specific perfume that Suya used. Besides, that perfume was personally created by Suya and she would make a huge bottle for herself every year. He thought to himself, Suya had also begun to lie. Therefore, it was not him who had changed. Yu Minmin was in the midst of packing her things with the servants. There were not many things that she brought along with her when she came, but a nation gave her many presents and she had to bring them back. Gu Jingming had returned. He opened the door and saw Yu Minmin. Oh, you came back at the right timing. Can you check if we missed out anything? Asked Yu Minmin. You can handle it. He entered the room looking at Yu Minmin and was about to say something when Linda burst through the door hurriedly. Sir. What is it? Asked Gu Jingming. I just received some news. The typhoon has caused destruction to S City in the south and its islands. The landslide enveloped a village and an emergency evacuation is still undergoing in the heavy rain. The estimated casualties is at about 200 now, said Linda. Yu Minmin looked up from the back. Gu Jingming's expression darkened. He gestured, get ready. We are going back. Yes, sir. The plane is ready. Previously, they had mentioned that the typhoon might delay their flight. They did not expect the typhoon to cause some destruction. Looking at the number of casualties, the situation was dire. It was certain that Gu Jingming had to return to settle some matters. Without saying a word, she clapped her hands, stood up. She heard Gu Jingming said, we will be landing directly at S City. Oh, okay. There were a number of them leaving a nation. At departure, the president of a nation came to send them off personally. It was to express his apology to Yu Minmin and to C Nation. The servants were reluctant to see Gu Jingming leave and were thinking that they had a president too. But why was he so different from Gu Jingming? It was a pity that he stayed for only a few days. They could not bear to watch him go. The plane was heading straight for S City. It was on the news that the president was deeply concerned after hearing the news and was on his way to S City after his visit to a nation. During the flight, Gu Jingming was busy handling the nation's affairs. Lin and a few other officials were going back and forth, gathering information and devising solutions. Yu Minmin felt out of place. When it came to such big matters concerning the nation, she could not contribute but only watched how busy everyone was. She felt guilty and being the president's wife was in vain. She could not even help with a single bit. At the same time, she looked at Gu Jingming and admiration filled her heart. Working in such urgent situations, Gu Jingming was like a strategic warrior who was composed and unfazed in the midst of this chaos. He was definitely not losing his presence of a king. Soon, they reached S-Town. They got off the plane and was welcomed by the mayor. It was still drizzling. Gu Jingming accompanied Yu Minmin to the hotel to put down their belongings. Gu Jingming told Yu Minmin, "The weather is bad. Don't go outdoors alone. I will be back soon." Don't worry. Just take care of yourself, replied Yu Minmin. Gu Jingming pulled her closer and lowered his head to look at Yu Minmin. He gently caressed her lips. It was pouring heavily outside. It was perfect to lie in the cozy bed and to rip her open completely. He kissed her lips and the touch had left her wanting for more. With a lot of force, he sucked her lips into his, relishing every taste in her mouth and wishing to devour her completely before letting go of her. Her lips turned numb, but that firm expression of his looked exceptionally attractive. Caressing her, he said, "Wait for me." Then, he opened the door and left the room. It was only then when Yu Minmin realized that Linda was still there. The convoy was in the room too. That Gu Jingming. However, the rain was getting heavier and the island had most probably come to a halt. Besides the location where the landslide occurred, the other areas were also badly affected. Yu Minmin watched the skies from the window and thought of Gu Jingming who was at the disaster areas. She could not help but felt unsettled within. This unsettling feeling soon turned into reality. Just as Yu Minmin was watching the television, there came breaking news from the scene. The reporter's face was distorted due to the heavy storm. Bad news. The fearless Mr. President headed to the disaster areas to direct the rescue efforts personally. However, a landslide had just occurred again and we have lost all contact with the village. Mr. President was in the village and it is not clear if he is dead or alive. The remote control that was in Yu Minmin's hands fell to the ground with a thud. Dead or alive? Gu Jingming. When Qin Wanwan reached Hollywood, it brought about another commotion among the media who reported that the Hollywood journey of Qin Wanwan had already begun. Upon reaching, Qin Wanwan headed straight to look for Stephen. Qin Wanwan was on the phone with Mary and she told Qin Wanwan to look for Stephen. "Thank you for helping me. Stephen had no one else to choose besides you. We want to achieve a record-breaking box office sales and someone with good acting skills is suited for the role. The options weren't many. That Lin would never ever join the cast. I would not allow it. Don't worry. Stay on my side and it will never go wrong for you," said Mary. Chapter 654. Lin Che, did you know that Gu Jingze lied to you? Thank you for helping me. Stephen had no one else to choose besides you. We want to achieve a record-breaking box office sales. We want someone with good acting skills and is suited for the role, but there aren't many options. That Lin Che would never ever join the cast. I will not allow it. Don't worry. Be on my side and it will all go well for you, said Mary. Qin Wanwan smiled. That's for sure, Miss Mary. I will definitely be on your side. Upon meeting Qin Wanwan, Stephen sized her up with displeasure, just like how he had treated Lin Che before. Qin Wanwan immediately went up to flatter him, but Stephen did not seem to acknowledge her. He held up his hand and simply said, "Try out a scene." Qin Wanwan felt a little awkward. Was she to start her audition right away? Previously, I saw Lin Che's performance through her film and I thought that it was good. You didn't show me yours, so I can only ask you to act on the spot now. This is the script, look through it and let me know when you are ready, said Steven. Sure, actually, Lin Che and I debuted in the same year. We are considered two of the most outstanding actresses back at home, so don't worry, Chin Wanwan replied with a smile. Steven was still doubtful but told her to go and read the script. Chin Wanwan was displeased. She was an A-list actor back in the home country but over here, she was treated like a rookie. However, Steven was a very renowned film director. Previously, when she had visited Hollywood, she already knew that people here did not regard C country's influence because they did not even watch its films. After a while, Steven came to rush her and she could only go on stage right away. It was a love scene. She thought that it would be easier to act it out but it turned out to be the toughest. The lines were ordinary but it was difficult to express the emotions naturally. On the other hand, emotional and crying scenes which required more intense expressions were easier to grasp. Steven watched her audition and nodded silently. He took the script and left, and told her that he would have to discuss it with others. George came towards Steven, looked at him, and said, "How was it?" Shaking his head, Steven said, "Not as good as Lin." "Well, I definitely hope that Lin will resolve the issue but in the event that it doesn't go well, we can only choose Chin Wanwan. Not to mention, she was recommended by Mr. Henry. We have offended him. If we wish to have a smooth filming process, we should do him this favor." "Alright, let me ask Lin and check on her situation." Lin Che was mercilessly rejected by Mr. Henry, so she had no choice but to return to her hotel first. Everyone gathered to brainstorm a solution but since they were unfamiliar with the Hollywood environment, they could not come up with a good plan. After a long time, they received news from home, saying that tragedy struck Mr. President and it was unclear whether he was alive or dead. Lin Che was taken aback. "Goodness, it can't be. What about Sister Yu? Quick, call Sister Yu now. They should have some information." "Is that important now? If something had really happened, would Sister Yu be in the mood to tell you?" Lin Che immediately called Yu Minmin. However, the phone was turned off. Lin Che got even more worried. Yu Minmin would never turn off her cell phone because her work required her to keep her phone switched on at all times. She hurriedly sent Yu Minmin a message on WeChat. As expected, there was no response. But Lin Che hoped that Yu Minmin would see the message. Everyone looked at Lin Che, but she shook her head. Everyone was dejected. "Sigh, this matter is close to the heart after all, we know Mr. President's wife. What does that have to do with you? That's enough. Why not think of a solution to resolve the situation here? There has still been no news after half a day, that is probably good news. If something really happened, it would definitely cause an uproar." Lin Che left them to discuss it while she called Gu Jingze. The call went through after a few rings. "How are things now?" Lin Che asked anxiously. "I just saw the local news reporting that C country's president got into an accident and there are no updates about him yet. I am on my way to S City and I am still quite far away. All planes are grounded. I am on the expressway," said Gu Jingze. "How did the situation become so severe? Is the typhoon weather still very bad?" asked Lin Che. "Yes, it is." "Goodness. Take care of yourself, Gu Jingze." "Don't worry, I will be fine. Be a good girl and don't do anything silly. It is probably a good thing that you are overseas. Now that there is typhoon here, the weather is really bad." The great weather in Los Angeles made it difficult to picture the chilly weather back home. As Lin Che returned to the room, everyone's eyes were on her. "How is it, Sister Lin Che? Did you find out anything?" Lin Che shook her head and replied, "No news yet." "Alright, I thought you were able to find out some information." "Why would Sister Lin Che get any news? Sister Lin Che is so powerful. Her connections are much wider than yours. What do you know? We can't contact Yu Minmin now. She should be very busy. The best thing that we can do is to complete our task properly." Lin Che thought to herself, misfortunes seldom come alone and it had to be now. She has just failed to resolve her situation and back home, Yu Minmin encountered another problem. Indeed, misfortunes seldom came alone, but what was unexpected was that Lin Che was looking at her phone when a WeChat notification popped out. She opened the notification. It was a stranger and it wrote Mo Hilling. That fellow. Lin Che clicked, accept, wondering what she was up to this time around when she contacted her. Mo Hilling did not say anything but only sent over a picture. It was a car and Lin Che was puzzled. Looking closely at it, it was Gu Jingze's house. But she still could not figure out its meaning. Then, Mo Hilling said impatiently, she said, take note of the background. It's a hospital, a private hospital. More specifically, it's a gynecological private hospital. Do I need to elaborate further? After hearing what she said, Lin Che took a closer look. She was right. What are you implying? Lin Che asked. Why would a father not be concerned for his child? The moment you left, he came to the hospital to keep me company. We looked at the child together and the child is healthy. Oh, he even looked for the best gynecologist for me. His name is Gu Chunlai. I'm not sure if you heard of him, but I don't think so, right? Only someone who has a child would know. What? Gu Jingze brought her to the hospital. It couldn't be. Lin Che knew that Gu Jingze would never bring Mo Hilling to the hospital for a gynecologist appointment. Even if he was at the hospital with her, there must have been other reasons. However, those thoughts still infuriated her. It felt as if her blood was boiling and she could no longer contain her anger. This Gu Jingze, was he fooling around in her absence? Why did he not inform her about accompanying Mo Hilling to the hospital? Chapter 655. You are just picking up the things that I do not want. Lin Che clenched her hands. She was typing on her phone until her fingers hurt. She thought to herself, I will not let you off, Gu Jingze. Just watch out when I return. Thinking that Gu Jingze was preoccupied with searching for Gu Jingming, he must be worried sick and feeling more desperate than her. Because of Gu Jingming, she decided to let him off for once until everything was settled. Then, she would confront him about this, humph. Seeing how Lin Che's expression changed at once, the people around her shot her puzzled looks. Sister Lin Che, what happened to you? When Lin Che snapped out of it, she looked at these people in front of her, all watching her in confusion. Some stared at her blankly while others seemed shocked. Lin Che had forgotten that they were still around. Quickly retracting the angry expression on her face, she laughed dryly and said, oh, nothing. I am going out to take a breather. Ah, Sister Lin Che, I will go with you. They followed her quickly, worried that she might be taking things too hard on herself. If something happened to Lin Che, they would not be able to answer for it. Therefore, they could not let her wander off on her own. Soon, they were out. The hotel lobby was playing soothing music in the background. Lin Che took a deep breath. Despite dressing casually in a white chiffon outfit with a beige coat, she continued to gain attention while standing there with both hands in her pockets. Her beauty and elegance were so extraordinary that even when they came to a place with different beauty standards, she was still turning heads. Lin Che. There came a voice from behind. It belonged to someone whom Lin Che prayed hard that she would not see at that moment. She could not believe that Qin Wanwan was also staying at the same hotel. She just came back to the hotel, dressed in high heels and culottes, looking very fashionable. Behind her was a big group of staff members. They had most probably just returned from a street photo shoot for some photos to be sent back home. Qin Wanwan sized up Lin Che and said, it has been a while. I didn't expect to meet you here. Looks like the production team has booked the same hotel for both of us. Lin Che glanced at Qin Wanwan. Oh, I heard that you came for an audition. My apologies that you had to make a special trip here. Don't mention it. It's only right that I come and help you. After all, we have known each other for such a long time. Now that you can't continue the role, I should come quickly. Don't you think so? Thinking about it, you must be down on your luck. How could you offend Mr. Henry as soon as you came to Hollywood? I suggest you visit the temple to pay your respects and get rid of the bad luck when you return home. Lin Che wanted to tell her that it was all due to her own efforts, but she simply looked at Qin Wanwan and gave a sweet smile. Thank you for your advice. In fact, I was the one who let you down. I could not keep this role, so later on when you got this role, others might say that you took it away from me, or they might say that I didn't want this role anymore and gave it to you. You became my substitute. How could I let you be my substitute? Qin Wanwan's expression darkened upon hearing her words. Lin Che snorted and walked off. Her crew was also staring at Qin Wanwan. Both sides seemed hostile towards each other and the situation seemed tense. Then, Qin Wanwan called out, "Oh right, I heard Mr. Henry enjoys drinking red wine. Since you have met him already, he would have told you about this, right?" Lin Che turned around. Qin Wanwan looked at her with an arrogant smile. "Don't mind me, I just prepared some red wine for Mr. Henry, but I am not sure if I chose the one he likes, so I wanted to get your opinion. Miss Mary has invited me to Mr. Henry's place tomorrow, and to show my respect for him, a gift is a must. After all, not everyone gets an opportunity to be invited to Mr. Henry's place. With such a rare opportunity, I definitely must not mess it up." Did she just admit that those were all her doings? That's great. Watching how Qin Wanwan was outrightly trying to provoke and mock her, she thought that it was ridiculous. Shaking her head, she said, "I wish you a smooth sailing journey ahead while you are here." "Thanks, don't worry, it will be." Qin Wanwan watched Lin Che and her crew leave the hotel and snorted. Sister Lin, who came specially with her, added, "Look at her dejected look, still trying to put up a pretense in front of others. Forget it, you can't get through everything with pretense, so let her be. Anyway, she is going to reap her own consequences now. We should try to understand her. After all, this role was hers in the first place, now that it was passed on to another person, it's mine now." She would naturally feel jealous, she said, her eyes showing no sympathy but were mocking her. Sister Lin laughed, "Yes, you are right. Mary would be especially taking her to Henry's place tomorrow, proving that Mary was really nice to her. If someone heard it, they would have been so envious." Although Lin Che was feeling very angry, she continued to remain silent. There was no point in quarreling with Qin Wanwan now. She had indeed taken away the role, but Lin Che could not pick up a fight with her. The next day, Qin Wanwan had specially dressed up before visiting Henry. It was a great honor to be able to visit someone's home in that culture. She entered a beautiful manor. Sister Lin commented, "The manners here are very impressive. Those who live here are either Hollywood superstars or very wealthy people. It's not too far from Hollywood and there are great views here too. Look there, they are all villas." Quote. Qin Wanwan was feeling great. She entered the place and saw the wound on Mary's face. It could be seen clearly and was still in gauze. It seemed like that strike was really a harsh one. This Lin Che. Qin Wanwan thought to herself, it was Lin Che who got into trouble. Where did she get the guts to hit Mary with such great force? She thought that they would get into a fight and that was bad enough, but who knew that Lin Che did not even hold back her strength? Mary told her, "Don't worry. Henry had already asked the staff from the Actors Guild to remind them. They are also aware of the consequences of going against Henry. You might not know Henry well, but he is definitely one with great weight in Hollywood." Qin Wanwan was very courteous towards Mary, hoping that she would be able to create more chances for herself to meet Henry. Then, a Filipino servant came in and uttered some words to Mary that Qin Wanwan could not understand. "That's great, someone is here to see you," Mary said. Qin Wanwan pointed at herself. "Me? Yes, she heard that you came from Sea Country, so she wanted to drop by," Mary replied. "Oh, who is that?" "Someone whom you would not regret meeting. She is the young lady of the Wei Group," said Mary. "The Wei Group?" "Yes, once they are listed, their assets could go up to 50 billion. Their family has been in the industry for many years. They specialize in the oil refinery." Chapter 656. The trafficker whom I met at France is here. If it had to do with oil, they must have come from an influential background. After listening to what the interpreter said, Qin Wanwan quickly searched for their information online. She then realized that the family was one of the wealthiest in the world. The Wei family held 85% of shares of Wei Technology, and two of its most powerful members were in the list of Forbes' top 10 richest people, one after another. Their power was indeed incredible. Why would such a powerful and influential person want to see her? Qin Wanwan hurried out, refreshed herself, and was feeling very excited. When she went out, she saw a young lady in her teens, dressed up fancifully. She looked like she was of mixed race, and had ancestry from sea country. It can't be, right? Are you really the superstar who came from sea country? She said in a hostile tone. Despite feeling out of place, Qin Wanwan did not dare to offend her. She replied hurriedly, you can speak sea country's language. This is great, I am really surprised to hear a familiar language here. The young lady walked towards her, circled her while inspecting her from head to toe in a disrespectful manner. Her gaze was as if Qin Wanwan was an item, and this made Qin Wanwan felt uncomfortable. She cursed the young lady in her heart, but still had to pretend to be friendly with her. She kept telling herself, don't mind her. She's a missy from an influential family, so it's common to have some temper. The next moment, the young lady switched to speak in English. Without giving a thought about Qin Wanwan, she told Mary, when I heard your description, I thought it would be someone I know, but she's not. Forget it, I am not interested anymore. I'm leaving. Mary quickly went up to her, hey, don't be like that. Since you are already here, why not stay for a while? Let me look for a game for you to play. No, thank you, my dad is taking me to the beach. He wants to surf, so I have to go with him. You know, there was an outburst of his fatherly love lately. He felt that he has not been treating me well. Mary could only reply, all right, since it was your father who asked for you. However, it's a pity that she's not the one you wanted to meet. Never mind. However, I don't think she is good. Is she going to act in blood? She doesn't look suitable at all. Well, Mary could not explain much, and the young lady waved to say goodbye. Qin Wanwan, who was by their side, felt very puzzled. Mary waited for her to leave the room before speaking. She's very willful. She once left home for about 3 years and just came back recently. She was actually an illegitimate child and just entered into the family, so she's a little odd, but she's rich, you know. I have to give in to her. Oh, so why did she want to see me? Qin Wanwan asked. Nothing much. She was probably just curious about people from sea country. Mary did not tell her that the young lady came because she thought that Qin Wanwan might have been the person she was looking for. But the interpreter had already told Qin Wanwan, and she felt that it was a pity. She was not the one whom the young lady wanted to meet. She had neither the power nor connections to know a missy from such a wealthy family. Thus, she was really mistaken for someone else. Lin Che heard that Henry was going to the yacht that day. They were going to have a party on the yacht by the beach, most probably a private gathering, but Lin Che wanted to try her luck. After all, she had to meet Mr. Henry in person before she could talk to him about that issue. At the beach, the sun shone brightly. Lin Che brought along her staff members to the location where Stephen had told her the yacht would be. She wanted to walk in further but was stopped. You can't enter here. I'm looking for Mr. Henry. Mr. Henry? No, this is a private gathering, you can't enter. Lin Che stood there and took a glance at the yacht. She thought, since he had gone into the yacht, he would have to exit eventually, right? If that's the case, we could only wait for him to leave. And at that moment, hey, a cheerful glee caught Lin Che by surprise. She turned around and saw a person with afro hair running towards her. Hey, it's really you. That's great. Speaking in sea country's language, that person came skipping towards her. Lin Che was shocked for a moment, but when she saw that person, she remembered who she was. Oh, it's you, the trafficker. Could it be that you left France and came over here specifically to get people? Surely, Lin Che had not forgotten this exotic girl. Back in France, not only was she betrayed by this girl, she even helped her. When Lin Che returned, she was reprimanded by Gu Jingze. Now that she even came to where Lin Che was, what could it be about? She still looked as exotic as ever, but not as down and out as before. Looking at Lin Che, she pounced on Lin Che and gave her a big hug. I'm not here to get people, I have switched jobs long ago, she said while removing herself from Lin Che. Is that so? Then, why are you here? Asked Lin Che. My family is here. I am here for a holiday. My dad brought me here to have fun, she said. That's great. So you have decided to return home for good? Lin Che said. Scratching her afro head, she replied, yes, I am sick of France already, so I decided to come back. She did not tell Lin Che that it was because after she had received Lin Che's help, it gave her warmth. She thought through it and decided to return home and deal with her issues. Fortunately, after she returned, her father no longer forced her into marriage, so the days were much better compared to the past. I have been looking for you for quite a while. A few days ago, I saw a promotional poster. I thought it was you, so I came quickly to see you, but it turned out to be someone else. I was still feeling very disappointed a while ago, but I didn't expect to meet you here. Lin Che was very surprised as well. The sun is too strong. Let's go. Let me take you to eat some food, she said. But she wanted to say that she was here to look for Mr. Henry. But taking another glance at the yacht, it was very likely that she would not be able to see Mr. Henry that day. She thought, forget it then, I shall go and get some food first. And thus, she left with the young lady. Back home. City. The storms continued to rage on. The skies remained dark. There was no difference in the day as in the night, and it was terrifying. The sudden appearance of Gu Jingze made Yu Minmin run out hurriedly. Mr. Gu, you are finally here. How are things now, Mr. President? Don't worry, Gu Jingze stood there. Big brother will be fine. I will go to the site immediately. I am arranging for a ship to go over. The place that collapsed was on the island and the currents are too big, making it difficult for the usual ships to enter the island. However, we have already arranged for the best naval ships to go there right away. After listening to what he had said, Yu Minmin felt even more frightened. That island was in the middle of the sea. It would be more dangerous. I am going. I want to go, Yu Minmin said. No, Gu Jingze rejected her offer at once. It's very dangerous and unclear whether the president is still alive or dead. I can't allow any danger to happen to Mrs. President. Chapter 657. I want to look for Gu Jingming. Of course, Yu Minmin would not relent. Nobody knows that I am Mrs. President anyway. But in the end, Gu Jingze still managed to stop Yu Minmin from heading out. Let me go. No, Gu Jingze pulled her back. Lin Che calls every once in a while. I can't let anything happen to you and tell her that both you and your husband were met with danger. You. Watch her, Gu Jingze told the guards. Yu Minmin stood there and watched Gu Jingze walk out of the room without looking back. The convoy looked at Yu Minmin, feeling very troubled. Hey, you are the president's convoy and I am Mrs. President. Shouldn't you listen to me? Yu Minmin said. The convoy remained silent. Fine, that Gu Jingze is really powerful. All of you are afraid of him. Fine, I will go back. Anyway, my status as Mrs. President will be gone soon. The president is not around anymore. What's the point of being Mrs. President? Said Yu Minmin. Yu Minmin returned to her room. The convoy followed her, but Yu Minmin turned around and rebuked them, leave my room. I want to be alone. The convoy stayed outside her room. Yu Minmin's eyes were fixed on the news. The media continued to report about the situation on site. People all over the country were praying for Mr. President. Many young girls were crying while watching the news. However, it was still unclear whether Gu Jingming was alive or dead. Yu Minmin bit her nails while watching the news. It was reported that more naval soldiers were about to set off to the island and the earthquakes persisted. They had received very weak signals from the island but still could not get the exact details of the situation in it. All they knew was that the extent of the devastation was quite bad. After waiting for half an hour, Yu Minmin felt that she could no longer wait anymore. Yu Minmin took a glance out of the window. She was at the 6th story and it was still pouring outside. She bent over the window and looked at the ground. Getting down was not impossible. There were air conditioner units around as well as flower racks. She gritted her teeth. Eventually, she tore the curtains and as she descended, she tied one end of the curtain around her and used it like a rock climbing rope, tying the other end to the metal bars of the lower levels. She descended slowly using the curtains, bit by bit, withstanding the rain and winds until she finally reached the ground. At the beach, Gu Jingze stood there while the commander of the naval army shouted the orders amid the chaos. Nobody is allowed to go over. Nobody is allowed to move. Let us do it. The naval army saw a man in a white shirt holding onto a black umbrella and called out to him, "Hey, I am referring to you." Leave now. When the commander of the naval army walked over, he was shocked to realize that the person standing there was Gu Jingze. This is Mr. Gu, the guard said. Oh, yes, and you resembles Mr. President a little. My apologies that I didn't realize earlier, Mr. Gu. The commander said anxiously, but it's still very dangerous to be out here. Please go indoors, sir. It's fine, just focus on the rescue mission. I won't cause any trouble while I'm here. I have my own protection measures, said Gu Jingze. The commander glanced at the convoy and guards who were carrying the Gu family's badge and nodded quickly. He had heard that these forces were much stronger than the army. After you enter the island, retain all information at all costs. Remember that no matter what happened to Mr. President, do not disclose any information, Gu Jingze said. The commander was shocked upon hearing it. Looking at the solemn expression on Gu Jingze's face, the piercing, chilly winds paled in comparison with the cold and domineering aura of Gu Jingze, and it made him shudder. Yes, rest assured, Mr. Gu. This was an important task, therefore he understood his instructions. That moment, Yu Minmin. She ran to the pier directly and saw the crowds come and go. The shoutings and commotions never ceased, and afar were the army troops. They formed an impenetrable human wall. No one could dream of entering. What made her surprised was that by the shore, several girls were screaming that they wanted to go over and look for Mr. President. Besides the girls, there were also some male fans and they were stirring up a commotion over there. Yu Minmin hurried over. It was nighttime and during the chaos, nobody would have given much thought about Yu Minmin. She saw a girl whose face had turned red from crying. Yu Minmin went up to her and asked anxiously, "Why are you crying? Did something happen?" The girl was sobbing uncontrollably such that she could not speak properly and Yu Minmin was worried that something had really happened. The people around her added, "We want to go and look for Mr. President, but they would not allow us to go over. We want to do something for the country as well. Why don't they let us go? Can't we go over as volunteers? Oh Mr. President, I wonder what had happened to him. I want to go and save people. Go and save people. If ships can't go over, then send people to swim across. It's not a far distance anyway." So there was a commotion because they wanted to go to the island to save people. They were just fooling around. At first Yu Minmin was shocked, but now, she finally understood. The situation did not get worse, but she took a glance over the guards and she was determined to get to the island. "Let me through, I want to go in," Yu Minmin said. The guards did not look at her at all. "You don't have to beg to him. It's useless. Humph, they would never let us go over. They are simply cruel. We were here for an hour now but they still wouldn't let us through," said the girls who were standing nearby. Yu Minmin grabbed the person in front of her who looked like a soldier. She did not care about the girls behind and cried out, "Let me through. I want to look for my man." Gu Jingming was indeed her man. She had to go and look for him. No one should stop her. The people heard her screams and shouted together, "Yes. Look for my man. Mr. President is ours." The guard took a glance at Yu Minmin. "The best support you can give Mr. President is to return home quickly. Leave quickly and don't interfere with our mission. We understand how you feel, and now, no one would be more desperate than us to go over to save the people. Enough, stop your nonsense. I want to get through now. Step aside. I want to board the ship to go and look for Gu Jingming. Do you hear me?" The soldier froze. He watched Yu Minmin sweep her wet hair to the side and took a closer look. The person before their eyes was Mrs. President. Yes, we are sorry, we did not realize that it was Mrs. President." He did not dare to make her unhappy and immediately let her through. Everyone was astonished. "Hey, why is that she can enter but we? That's enough. Move aside, she's Mrs. President." "Huh? What?" The crowd started chattering among themselves. After getting through the guards, Yu Minmin ran towards the main road. The ship ahead was sent by the naval army. They are about to set off. One of the soldiers told her. "I want to board that ship to go and look for Gu Jingming." "What, it's too dangerous." "Don't worry, is Gu Jingze there?" "Yes," the soldier replied upon seeing Yu Minmin's determined look. "It's good that he's staying here to watch guard. I am going with the ship. All of you have not been by Gu Jingming's side. How would you know his physical traits? Said Yu Minmin. Yu Minmin's words made sense. The soldier thought to himself and went to report to his officer hurriedly. Chapter 658. Gu Jingming was seriously injured. The officer came out to receive Yu Minmin personally. Regarding this issue, should we inform Mr. Gu? A while ago, he was standing by the shore. The commander seemed a little fearful of Gu Jingze. No need. I have already told him. Let's go. He knows where I am going, she replied immediately. She was not lying. Gu Jingze knew where she would head to, but he would not agree to it. After hearing what she said, the commander thought to himself, after all, they belong to the Gu family. He should not interfere with what a sister-in-law and brother had agreed upon. Besides, just as she had mentioned, she could recognize her husband at once if she went along with the search party. However, the island was in chaos and they were not sure about the situation there. What if Mr. President was unconscious, injured or even dead? With Yu Minmin around, she would be able to recognize him right. Commanders like them could only see Mr. President during special occasions such as during New Year or important meetings. Apart from these occasions, they could only see Gu Jingming on the internet. Yu Minmin was definitely more familiar with him compared to them. As for safety issues, they would need to pay extra attention along the way and not let Yu Minmin wander off alone. It should not be a problem if they were more careful. The commanders ushered her on board the ship. The ship sailed across the straits and went straight for the island. The situation on the island was indeed terrible. The only boardwalk that stretched into the island was hit by the strong currents, leaving the island in isolation. The electricity and water supply was also cut off. Seeing a ship approaching the island brought hope to everyone. Look, someone's here to rescue us. That's great. I knew we wouldn't be forsaken. That's for sure. Mr. President has also come personally to rescue us. Why would we be forsaken? Mr. President is still with us too. Everyone watched the crew getting off the ship. The commander asked anxiously, "Where's Mr. President?" The leader stiffened and dared not say a word. He looked at the commander and knew that he must be of some high ranks. The island was long forgotten, but because of the typhoon, many important people of the country came to take part in the rescue works. These were all very important people in the country. He was afraid that he might cause some trouble if he was not careful. The look on the leader's face made the commander felt that something was wrong. His expression darkened and got very worked up. He grabbed another resident's shoulder and demanded, "I am asking you now. What happened to Mr. President?" That person shuddered. He turned his head and pointed towards the back. "He's inside." The commander snorted and went back to the ship to usher Yu Minmin. Yu Minmin had already heard what the resident said. Her heart skipped a beat and all of a sudden, she became a little terrified. She was afraid that Gu Jingming would not return again. What should she do then? What should she do? Jumping off the ship, she made a dash ahead. The people on the ship quickly ran after her. After running a distance, she saw a crowd around a house. Their expressions looked worried and they were talking among themselves. Suddenly, the sky was torn by lightning and the thunder roared. Yu Minmin halted her footsteps. Anxiety increased as her eyes shifted. Then, she ran towards the house. "Move out of the way. Let me in." She came to the door but was held back strongly by another person. "You cannot enter. No one is allowed to come near. This is a rule for everyone," the person at the door remarked. "Let me in," Yu Minmin shouted. "I already said no." "Hey, let her in, she's Mrs. President." The commander came rushing over and called out when he saw what had happened. The person at the door was shocked for a moment and let loose of his grip. All eyes were on Yu Minmin as she ran into the house hurriedly. It was an ordinary residential house. There were still some guards of his convoy next to Gu Jingming. Yu Minmin's sudden appearance shocked everyone, but they were also relieved upon seeing her. Yu Minmin came, which also meant that the rescue team had also arrived. "Madam. Madam, you are here. Where's Mr. President?" Yu Minmin asked right away. "He's inside, madam." Mr. President, the one speaking bowed his head in silence and Yu Minmin's heart sank once again. Then, she barged into the room. Upon opening the door, the pungent smell of medicine filled her nostrils. Gu Jingming was lying on the bed. His body was wrapped in bandages and the white cloth was stained with blood. His brows furrowed and he laid there motionlessly. Yu Minmin felt a sharp pierce through her heart. Gu Jingming. She ran over quickly. She threw herself next to him and caressed the back of his hands. It was cold. With her hand shaking, she held his hand and tried to warm it up. She lifted her head and called out his name softly, Gu Jingming. Gu Jingming, wake up. The doctor told her, Madam, Mr. President had fainted. We don't have sufficient medical supplies on the island but Mr. President was badly injured, so we stitched up his wounds without using anesthesia, and it has been about an hour since Mr. President lost consciousness. What? Badly injured? Yu Minmin looked up and asked. Mr. President was giving out orders in a room but the waves came crashing on the house and the wooden beam collapsed, the doctor explained. Yu Minmin's heart wrenched. Fortunately, Mr. President is very strong-willed. After we rescued him, he was still conscious but due to excessive loss of blood, his body became very weak. I suggest taking Mr. President to a better hospital for treatment as soon as possible. Yu Minmin raised her head and looked at those peaceful eyes. They were shut tightly and his good-looking face lost all colors. She could not help but lift her hand and gently brush his hair to the side. Then, she nodded and said, take him to the boat. We are going to another hospital. Gu Jingming was then brought up to the naval ship by his convoy. The best hospital in S City was waiting to receive him with an individual ward. The media has also begun reporting that Mr. President was fine. He had only sustained minor injuries and it would not threaten his life, but was sent to the hospital for treatment. Chapter 659. The young lady said, this is my friend. The reason why he was loved by many had little to do with his looks and background. It was because of the hard work he put in every day. Los Angeles. Lin Che went to eat with the young lady. The Chinese food that the young lady ordered did not taste very delicious. Evidently, she had not been to sea country. But as the young lady was tucking into the food, she said, my dad doesn't really enjoy Chinese food, but I love it. The Chinese food here is slightly bland. It's different from what we usually eat, said Lin Che. Oh, is that so? You will know when you visit sea country next time. By the way, what's your name? You have never told me. My name is Abigail, replied the young lady. Wow, you have a beautiful name. What's your surname? It's Wesley. Oh, it seems like you were really born here. Don't you have a name in sea country's language? No, I don't. I am an illegitimate child. My dad dislikes my mother, so he wouldn't let me come into contact with sea country's culture. Okay. While she was eating, Lin Che's phone rang suddenly. Upon seeing that it was Gu Jingze who called, she smiled and picked up the call right away. How is everything, Gu Jingze? Don't worry. We have brought Big Brother back from the island. He sustained some injuries but his life is not in danger. He's currently in the hospital for treatment. Yu Minmin is there too. Is it? That's great really. Most importantly is that he's well. When Lin Che knew that everything was alright back home, she could finally put her heart at ease. Abigail took Lin Che for a walk outside and asked her the reason she came to America. Lin Che told her that she was supposedly here for filming but had run into some problems. I hit the lover of Hollywood tycoon Henry, so she has been trying to hinder my work. I guess it will be difficult for me to continue filming for this movie, Lin Che explained. Then, Lin Che sighed deeply. Henry, the lover whom you are talking about. Is it Mary? Oh, you knew about it too. Lin Che looked at her with an astonished look and thought, she lived in Los Angeles. It would not be a surprise if she heard about it. Ha, so you were the one who hit her, Abigail continued. I was still wondering who had the guts to hit her. I didn't expect you to hit her. Seeing how excited she was and even looked very interested, Lin Che asked, what? Did the news spread so quickly already? Using her hands to cup her chin, she paused for a moment before saying, don't worry. She won't make things difficult for you. I will go and talk to her. What, you know Mary? Asked Lin Che. Yes, this is a coincidence. I got to know her recently. She may be here soon as Henry is having a party on the yacht ahead. Come, let us go over. Are you sure about this? Someone stopped me just now. Don't worry, you have me, they will let us through. Mary told Qin Wanwan that Henry would be on the yacht by the sea and she could take her to meet him. Qin Wanwan was delighted upon hearing that. Mary was giving her a lot of respect by bringing her there. At the same time, Qin Wanwan was very keen to know this Hollywood tycoon. She thought to herself, if she gets to make some connections with him, she did not need to worry about her career in Hollywood and she would also gain a reputation back in Sea Country. Besides, she would also be seen as meeting international standards. Back home, if your boyfriend was someone who was known internationally, the big brands would deem you as fashionable. Although Henry had many lovers, he was not married. If she could make him her boyfriend, many would be very envious of her. It did not cross her mind that she would be betraying Mary. She simply went along with Mary to the beach happily. When they entered the yacht, Mary told Qin Wanwan, Henry is currently with the Wesleys. You might also get to see that girl later. Is that so? But she doesn't seem to like me, Qin Wanwan said. Don't mind her. That's her personality. She doesn't have any preference. Alright then. It did not bother Qin Wanwan. Besides, she did not think that she could befriend someone of such a high status. She wanted to leave a good impression to Mr. Wesley so that he would give her an international endorsement contract. That would be great, but if she did not manage to get it, she would not mind too. Her target was the bachelor, Henry. In the yacht, there were some people drinking and playing cards. Henry, Mary called out. Henry raised his head and signaled them to come over with a smile. This is Qin, I have mentioned her to you before, said Mary. Henry lifted his head to see Qin Wanwan casting amorous glances at him. She stood there, looking very shy. She was very different from the superstars there in America and Henry thought that she was special. He broke into a wide grin and told her, that's great. We are short of hostesses and both of you came in time. Smiling to the man in front of him, Henry said, Mr. Wesley, what do you think of this Oriental beauty? Wesley lifted his head to take a look, but before he could speak, a person came skipping towards him happily and called out, Daddy, I brought a friend here to play. She ran over and put her hands around Wesley's neck. Wesley could not refuse. He simply looked at her dotingly and said, all right, do whatever you want. Qin Wanwan was annoyed and thought, seriously, why did that girl appear at this moment? How unlikable. This is the friend whom I have mentioned to you. She helped me when I was in France. I just found her, the young girl said. Is that so? Great, she came as well. Can you bring her over to meet Daddy? Of course. She ran out quickly. Wesley smiled and said, it's really tough to discipline children nowadays. If you don't give in to her, she's going to walk out of home again. I am really afraid of that. I don't think so. Abigail is very brave. She spent 3 years alone and nothing happened to her. Like father, like daughter, isn't it? Haha, that's true. It's also a form of training for her. She even led a group of followers, so I'm just glad she didn't starve herself to death. Everyone laughed. A child raised in a family like this might even be more willful than her. Who can tame the child? Then, Abigail's voice could be heard again. Follow me, come quickly. Lin, my father is inside. Qin Wanwan heard her speaking in Sea Country's language and turned to see who it was. The people turned their heads towards the door and saw Abigail pulling Lin Che strongly. Lin Che took a glance at the people in the room before walking in slowly. Lin Che. Qin Wanwan thought she had seen wrongly, but there was no mistake. Lin Che was dressed casually without makeup, which made her look very healthy and clean. With the sunshine of Los Angeles reflecting on her face, she appeared to be energetic and full of life. Henry froze at that moment. When Mary saw who it was, her face turned green. The next moment, anger rose within her and she charged towards Lin Che. It's you again. You still have the cheeks to come here. Chapter 660. Gu Jingze has also came to Los Angeles. Seeing Mary charge towards her, Lin Che was shocked. But at that moment, Abigail dashed in front of Lin Che. Mary, what are you doing? She's my friend. You'll have to get through me before laying a finger on her. Mary looked at Abigail furiously. How on earth did you become friends with her? Of course, we are very good friends. Besides, I have also asked her about the injury on your face. She didn't know that you would be there. I met her boyfriend. He is so good looking and extremely wealthy, someone who drives his Lamborghini around. Why would she be together with Henry? You must have been misled by others. How can that be? So be it. Will you believe me or the woman next to you? Mary was taken aback. She turned to look at Qin Wanwan and back at Abigail. Not waiting for Mary to respond, Wesley stood up. He looked at her and said, "Hey, I believe what my daughter said. She had told me about her experience in France. She had also mentioned that charming guy. I believe there must be some misunderstanding." Now that Wesley had also given his stance, Henry got up quickly and wrapped his arms around Mary. "All right, darling. I have told you many times. There's nothing between us and you wouldn't believe me. You should understand now, right? You are my one and only." Henry looked at Lin Che. In order to make Mary happy, he initially wanted Lin Che to back out of the film. Now that Wesley was also on Lin Che's side, Mary could only endure her unhappiness and let it go. Fine. Abigail then turned around and said, "Don't worry, Lin. I have already explained to her and Mr. Henry understood as well. He won't make things difficult for you anymore." Abigail shifted her eyes to Henry and continued, "Uncle Henry, am I right?" Henry looked at Abigail. He would surely do Wesley this favor. He went through many difficulties to make connections with Wesley. How could he give it up so easily? "Yes, you are right." Then, he told Lin Che, "Sorry that I have made things difficult for you, but you know, I can never offend a woman. I was just too compliant with Mary." Mary hit him shyly. "Don't push the blame to me, okay? It's because you are too flirtatious." "Oh, darling, I have done so much for you, yet you still doubt me." It had never crossed Qin Wanwan's mind that she would get to witness this scene. She gaped at them in astonishment. Lin Che and that girl. That girl looked at Qin Wanwan and frowned. Then, she asked Wesley, "Daddy, who is she? I met her just now, but she looks so annoying, I don't want to see her here. She only knows how to bootlick and resemble a dog." "Oh, is that so?" Wesley said. He raised his head and ordered the security to usher Qin Wanwan to the exit. "Take her out. There are currently too many people on the yacht, so we won't be accepting any more guests." Qin Wanwan looked ashamed while she was ushered out of the yacht. She glared at Lin Che, feeling very indignant but could only wonder how did Lin Che come to know this young lady, Wesley's daughter. Lin Che was truly very lucky. She always met someone who could save her out of the dire situation. But Qin Wanwan never knew that the reason Abigail liked and helped Lin Che was due to Lin Che's kindness. Her kindness has created many opportunities for herself. Abigail would never forget what Lin Che had told her while they were in France, so when she saw the promotional poster, she thought it might be Lin Che and rushed over. This was no coincidence. Lin Che was merely reaping what she had sown. Qin Wanwan was driven out of the yacht. Abigail had stood up for her and settled her problem. It then dawned on Lin Che what had just happened. "It can't be right. This boat belongs to your family." "That's right. Did Henry just let me off on your account?" "Not really. He thought he could take advantage of you easily, but now, he knows that you won't allow others to bully you, so he became very courteous with you. He gives in and dotes on Mary too much." "All right," Lin Che said, "you have such a comfortable home. Your father loves you so much and you still left home for 3 years. Of course, in fact, if I had not done it, my dad's attitude towards me would have never changed. I have also learned many things in the past 3 years and it has helped me find my directions in life." Looking at Lin Che, Abigail said, "And because of you, I have decided to start my life anew, so I would like to thank you, Lin." Lin Che smiled. "If you truly take me as your friend, call me Lin Che. Over here, if you call someone by their surname, it means that you guys are not friends yet, right?" "That's right. Over here, if you are not familiar with the other person, you address them by their surname." "All right, I will call you Lin Che." The girls smiled at each other. The next day, Stephen had received the news. He was overjoyed to be able to work with Lin Che again. Although he initially thought that Lin Che was lacking, after comparison, he felt that Lin Che was the best candidate out of all the actors in Sea Country. Also, compared to Qin Wanwan, Lin Che was so much better. "We will be signing the contract soon. That Chin fellow is really bad. I thought I would be working with her and it would have just ruined the script. Thankfully, you are back, Steven said. I am also very glad that I can continue to work with you, Lin Che smiled and replied. She left Steven and went out to call Gu Jingze. His phone was switched off and that was strange. Why would he switch off his phone? Could it be that something happened again? Lin Che was still deep in thoughts when her phone rang. It was Abigail. She wanted to ask Lin Che out for a meal. I'm currently with my staff members, Lin Che said. Awesome, bring them along. My family owns a villa by the beach here in Los Angeles. The view there is spectacular, Abigail said. Lin Che told her assistants and the interpreter and they were overjoyed. The Wesleys specialize in petroleum technology. They are very powerful and wealthy. Sister Lin Che, we are very amazed that you actually know her, the interpreter told Lin Che. We met by coincidence due to some matters. I never expected her family to be so powerful, replied Lin Che. Brushing aside the worries that had accumulated over the past few days, the staff members could finally lift up their spirits. They exclaimed cheerfully, of course, Sister Lin Che is really capable. She knows many influential people. Alright, enough of the boasting. Abigail is just a little girl. But she's an extraordinary little girl. Anyway, we are going to benefit from Sister Lin Che's honor and take a look at the wealthy's holiday villas. However, Lin Che did not know that Gu Jingze had just landed in Los Angeles. Should we inform Madam? His staff asked while looking at Gu Jingze. No, taking a glance at his watch, Gu Jingze said, let's head to our accommodation first. Yes, sir. Gu Jingze pondered for a moment and decided to send Lin Che a message. Were you looking for me?